Hey guys, good morning. Welcome to class. How's everyone doing today? Hopefully you had a good weekend. And we'll wait a couple of minutes for the rest of the class to join us. But I am coming at you from a small little place. So basically this weekend, my wife surprised me with like a little like getaway like near like downtown Disney and stuff like that. So I'm actually over here closer to this side of town. And yeah, we actually had a cool little weekend just kind of hanging out by the parks and doing a couple of fun activities here and there. And I decided just to kind of finish up the time here, or at least do morning class session right before I checked out, since it would be easier just to kind of do it here instead of rushing home and logging in at 9 a.m. So yeah, so it was actually kind of cool. I totally recommend it. We got to hang out over by like the California Adventure Hotel over by the pool area, which was really cool. Um, there's like a little restaurant that's kind of like on the corner there that you can kind of get in without a reservation if you sit like by the sort of like the bar area. So that's kind of like our little secret tip. If you ever want to eat poolside, go to California Adventure and go towards like the it's the hotel side, and where the pool is, look for the like the only bar section and ask to sit by the bar. Then you can get in there with no reservations. So it was really cool. We got to sit there poolside. It's like our own little secret getaway without like to get to hang out poolside over by Disney, like the Disney hotels and everything like that. So it was really cool. So yeah, so I just wanted to kind of connect you guys and give you a little tip there. We are Disney fans. My wife's a Disney fan, so it's nice and it's very cool. So I totally recommend it. So we'll see how it goes. Hopefully you guys had a good weekend as well, and doing things and everything went really cool. I think we almost have everybody in. So 2, 4, 5, 6. So we'll wait for a couple more minutes. But while we wait, just a couple of things I wanted to go over today. And so we can kind of see where we're at. And I'm going to open up our calendars so that you can see specifically what we are doing today. So we are now at week 2, day 5 of class, which is really cool. The first week was definitely a transition week. Just trying to understand how the ins and outs and the flows are and things of that sort. So I think it's going to go really well, and it's looking good. So the entire first week was basically focusing on mindset and just discussing the things that designers I feel need the most of. So even though it is a Photoshop graphic design class, a big part of just being a designer is being is about mindset. So we're problem solvers. We are constantly problem solving graphic issues, and so to do it in a vacuum and just in design is actually not enough. You really have to almost make it a lifestyle, where you're constantly, if you're serious about your topic, about your craft, it's almost like you're constantly in a place where you're always inspired, always visually open and aware of the visuals and your surroundings. Um, almost at like almost like second nature, it seems like, right? You can work up to it, and some of us are better at this at others, and I can honestly say that in the beginning, I think I was tuned in, but I was heavily distracted growing up, right? Because you know, grew up in like a 1-bedroom apartment, right? Family of 4 for like 15 years. Like there's a lot of distractions. Grew up in the inner city. So even though I was like very like tuned in and aware of my surroundings, I would say there was like more of an information overload. There was like too much going on, to the level that like, oh well, that I needed to balance those things out. So um when I discovered graphic design, I was like, oh, okay, this is great. Like I actually can flex my creative skills. But the first thing that I learned was that there's a lot of things that I need to understand about this world, which moving forward, that's going to help me get more control of the field, more control of the career side, more control of my design, and that's all mindset. So literally that first week, we talk about money, we talk about finance, we talk about what is the value of your work, how to negotiate, or we provide you with these resources on negotiation. We talk about smart goals, that that you have your goals, your artistic goals, but that should not you should not lose sight of your personal goals, right? You are not robots to work constantly. You can work many hours in the beginning of your career in order to advance yourself, but don't sacrifice relationships in order to do that, because then you get to where you're at, and there's no one to share it with, right? So it's very much lifestyle, it's very much mindset, it's very much like how you see yourself. And so that, and even sharing what very successful professional designers do and how they think, which was on Thursday when we saw the Objectified film. If you got a chance to finish watching that film, um, just to see the level of like dedication and just how these designers are speaking about their work is just speaks like droves about how we should operate. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you guys at least about 5 minutes to kind of share with one another um, a little bit of the work and what you liked about the movie, and share just briefly, like 5 minutes, um, the questions. And let me go ahead and open up that just so you can take a look at that really quick, because there was a series of questions. So I want to make sure um, that we get a chance to review it. And let's take a look here. And I'm going to go ahead and open up the question so that we can take a look at it. So bear with me for just a couple of seconds and get that link. And we'll go ahead and we'll open that up. And then why is that not going? Okay, that's fine. So, and we'll open it up. Okay, so we're gonna, for the warm up this morning, what we'll do is we'll basically just take a moment to share question number 6 on your film. So why did you like the film? So in this question, which is question number 6, overall, did you like this movie? Yes or no? Why do you like it? Why did you not like it? Take a moment to share that. I'm going to put you into some breakout rooms. And I would love for you guys to just take a moment to share what is it you liked about the film? What didn't you like about the film? And definitely when you go into those breakout rooms, if you're comfortable, turn on your cameras, say hello. We want to build community. We want to make sure that also you're getting some time to interact with each other, that you're just not consuming, but you're interacting with one another in the class. So take a moment to introduce yourself, and just be like, hey, how are you? My name is so-and-so. Just wanted, this is, some thoughts that I felt about this film and why I liked it and why I thought it was interesting. Okay. So we'll take a few moments to do that. We'll take about 5 minutes. We'll just kind of do a quick breakout room there. We should have enough for 3 or so and 2 participants per room. Plenty of time, plenty of space for that. And we'll go ahead and we'll get you set up there. And I'll set it up for about 5 minutes. And we'll set a 10-second countdown there. Okay. So go ahead and click onto your room. You can turn on your camera and share question number 6 on your document, and we'll see everybody in about 5 minutes, okay? All right, we'll see you in just a few. Okay, coming back. Welcome back, guys. Okay, so I'll ask the question, and you can unmute your mic. But what did you guys like about the documentary? Let's take a moment and let's just chat. Um, why did I show you that documentary? For multiple reasons. I think the big takeaway is I wanted you guys to understand and see what designers, how they talk, how they act, how they sort of see the world, as it were. I wanted you to get that, just immerse you into that world. I love Objectify because it's easy to understand, right? It's with everyone has made a thing of some sort, right? Whether it's like a popsicle toy or a thing, Legos, Play-Doh, we've all made something, a product, as it were, right? For school, home, whatever the case may be, right? So we can relate to that. But now when we see a professional designer, most of them starting out in graphic arts and moving into product, because a lot of them do know how to design graphically, because they have to design it on paper first, then move it into 3D and 3D modeling and physical stuff. What are some things that you kind of took away from it that you found interesting? Okay. And we'll just go down the list and we'll just, share one thing that you kind of found interesting about it. And we'll ask everyone in the class basically. So you can share again what you said in your group, but let's just go really quick. Give me like, 10, 15 seconds, one thing that you found interesting about the film, and then we'll go from there. Okay. So let's just go down the list on my Zoom. Myra, we'll start with you. What was like one thing that you found kind of interesting about the movie overall?
the the part where I guess they mentioned how the potato peeler, how
Hmm?
they decided to design one for people that have arthritis. It was hard for them to peel stuff using that, so they took the time to design something to help them use it comfortably.
Oh, okay. So that section was really interesting, really specific in what you liked about that, right? Okay. So yeah, the potato peeler was pretty awesome, and Japan, right? Like I thought it was really cool how to kind of engage your hand and set that up. So that was really cool. What was your takeaway also about the designer that created it? Like, um, did you was there something that you took away about that perspective and how he kind of looked at the world a little bit?
Yeah, how I was telling Amanda how I when I see things, I just see things, just buy things and that's it. But then I
Mhm.
started noticing like details on things. When I went to the store, I was like, oh, cool. Like, I wonder how they made this, because a lot of things have so much details. And I don't, some stuff like the toothpick, how I guess it's meant to be broken. And then if you're going to use it again, just to lean on it so you won't get dirty. I thought that was interesting. I never knew about the toothpick, how you could break the tip of it so you could save it.
Mhm. Yeah, and so something so simple, but yet it's been around for many, many years, right? Like hundreds of years, actually. So super subtle, but makes you wonder, why don't we go to that level on our work, or why don't we teach this, right? So subtlety, details, they all matter, right? Like we're very aware of the design world, or the world that's around it that's been designed. So that's cool. I'm glad that you got a little bit of a feel for it. So very cool there. Okay. Let's go down. Thank you for sharing, Maya. I appreciate that. Okay, let's go with I'm just going down the list here. Francesca, anything about the film that you took away from it, that you answered in question number 6 there? Like what was sort of the sentiment that you picked up from all these designers that you found interesting?
Yeah, so I found that the documentary really said that with so much uncertainty in today's society, we can always depend on a design, whether it's
Mhm.
aesthetically or functionally. We can always lean on it, and we can always say that there's a design out there that is is meant to be there. I guess I don't know. It's kind of like it's we can always depend on it, even if there's so much uncertainty in today's society. Like whether it's like clean, or if it works well in today's society, and it just keeps life simple, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So then in terms of like the designers and how they sort of view the world a little bit, was that sort of expected? Like, did you think well, that's how all designers are supposed to kind of look at their designs and their work? Or was it a little bit more than what you thought?
Yeah, I think that designers strive to make a design well-rounded and functional in society and keep it simple. Like I remember one designer, I think it was a French designer, he wanted to strip away any unnecessary design from the product, and I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that too, the twins, right? And so
yeah.
So how much can we take away for it to still work, to still function?
Mhm.
And I think what they were trying to say about that is like, design is not so much decor, right? There's a difference. So don't decorate because decoration is, I just like it just because I like it, but does that serve a purpose, right? Like in graphics and anything you design, like there should be a very clear reason why everything is visually like on the page, right? So if you're doing fashion, and let's relate it to you, right? In fashion, yeah, there are decor pieces and things like that,
Mhm.
but patterns, colors, they serve a purpose, right?
Right.
Sometimes those colors and those patterns are for an upcoming season. But what is that season? I mean, it's a season where people are going to wear it. So when people say season, they really should say things like, well, for the fall, what is the mindset of people that is, what are we going to design that's going to help people express themselves in the fall, right?
Mhm.
And what's happening now for us to help them get there. So, and so if people are, let's say like the pandemic, if they went through the pandemic and everyone was going through a difficult time, then are we going to design a line that is like it's pushing towards happiness and bright colors? Or are we going with something that's a little bit more subdued and is a little bit more muted and a little bit more subtle to kind of help people ease into, reopenings and things like that? Where do you go, right? And so as a designer, you're really like sort of making a decision and you're kind of expressing yourself, and hopefully other people can follow along and follow that expression, if that makes sense. So it's really what people want without them really kind of knowing what they want,
Mhm.
because you're helping them kind of express themselves. And most people have a hard time doing that in and of themselves, right? So in
Yeah.
that way, we need artists, we need designers to help us sort of experience things in a way that we can't do on our own, right? And that's a huge gift. That's a huge opportunity, because then in a consumer world, they buy the clothes because it's a self-expression. It's almost like you're buying a painting, but they're wearing your painting, right?
Right.
So it's a really cool world when you look at, and I'm just relating it to fashion, right? If it's graphic design, and let's say someone's asking you to do an advertisement or a logo, then obviously you're going to design something that is going to talk to someone in the fall or this age and forever after that. And so how does a graphic last timelessly? That's going to work. So it depends on how things function, right?
Mhm.
So and that's just one example of it. But yeah, but you have to think really deeply and ask these questions, and you're like, oh wow, I didn't know fashion can get so deep. That's an example of that. So
Mhm.
which is cool. Okay, cool. Thank you for sharing, appreciate that. Okay. Talia, how about you? Really quick, in like 15-30 seconds, what was in question number 6 that you found interesting? What did you like about that film, or what didn't you like about the film?
So give me just a second.
Yeah.
So what I wrote is that I did like this movie. I kind of just saw it as like a bigger like picture, more like than like specific ideas that different designers had. I said it's an eye opener into what goes into everything we own or consume. It shows people like me who are trying to break into the art industry that there are so many different creative routes you could take and apply art and design to. You can have your work in people's homes all across the globe, and it's insane to think about the impact, oh my gosh, you can have on millions or billions of human beings you've never met.
Yeah,
So
that's
just like
mhm,
the outreach is kind of nuts, like to think about.
mhm.
because I mean, you don't usually do that with like things you do in everyday life. So just thinking about the fact that you could have that kind of impact on people is really crazy to think about. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such an eye-opener, right? It's kind of sobering too, right?
Yeah.
Because then depending on what you design, it kind of determines the level of like seriousness towards the project, right?
Yeah.
So and it's not to scare you or anyone, but it's more to be like, okay, I understand that I have an opportunity to talk to a big audience. How am I going to do it in a way that is meaningful, understanding, but also like, making it beautiful, visually inspiring, right?
Yeah.
And make an impact, right?
It's like more of a responsibility, and it's there to motivate you instead of like shoot you down, essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when you like what you do, then the confidence is there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's kind of like, I know this will work, I like it, therefore I connect with it, therefore I feel like others can connect with it. But here's reasons how they can connect to it, right? So that level of thinking, it doesn't, it's not just all about me, and this is what I think is beautiful. There is also like a left brain side of it, which is I understand, like I understand the beauty and the natural side and the sort of the visceral experience of it and physically, right, and just emotionally. But then logically, there's also this part where I know also why this works. And so being able to switch between both sides of that left brain, right brain thinking, left brain is logical, very like how everything works in the world in the West, ideas, right? Whereas on the right side, it's very like emotional experience, how I feel. Those two are not independent; they work together, right? And so, so artists do a really good job of connecting these. Designers can do a really good job of connecting the two worlds, but they know how to flex both, right? I can explain it to you why it works visually, graphically, this concept art, but I can also tell that it's beautiful when I experience it. So I know when to go one side to the other, if that makes sense. So that's practice. That takes training, and that takes practice, and that's kind of what school does, is to get you there, right? But reminding you also that this is how we flex those two worlds a little bit. So that's one concept. Okay, great. Thank you for sharing. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
And then Amanda, how about you? So what did you take away from question number 6 and that you found interesting about the film?
I haven't gotten the chance to watch the documentary yet, but to add to what Myra said about the potato peeler, she said that normally there was only made like a potato peeler for like the right hand, and there are people with I'm not sure what it was, but it was something like a disability to do with the hand, and so they made more potato peelers accessible to people with those types of hand disabilities, or like, I don't know, those who don't use like the right hand maybe.
Yeah, the when you watch the film, I think it's like it's like 30 or 40, I think it's like in the first 30 minutes or 45 minutes in. The company is called EXO. They sell a lot in different places, but they're basically they talk about how they helped create a potato peeler that doesn't hurt the hands, and they actually talk about the story of how they designed it. So that story of like, oh, this is how we figured it out. This is what happened to us, and this is how we solved the problem. Those designers are there and they talk about it. So so the main idea of the film is to understand like how designers look at the world and how they see the world, evaluate and examine it, and basically design for it, if that makes sense. So definitely take a look at it, because it's more about how they think and examine and design for it, than anything else. Okay, and we'll get you there too. So yeah, it's a great film. It's very cool. And we'll finish off with Kalena. So Kalena, I mean, this is the first time seeing the film. You've had me before, but this is the first time seeing the film. So what was something about question number 6 that you answered, about why you didn't like the film?
Well, I I kind of put that I have like a neutral stance on this movie. Like I didn't like super like it or dislike it, because I found some things like interesting and some things that were funny and I connected with, but there were also some things that are really hard to connect with and like hard to follow with the story.
Mhm.
Definitely.
And any particular like example of that, like what that might have been or which part of that was there?
Well, I think some of the like I think it was one of the German designers where he was showing like all these
Mhm.
images of these like radios and stuff,
Mhm.
and they were like, I mean, he was talking about what he was talking about was good, but like the designs were very very old, and I didn't really seem to connect with them particularly.
Oh yeah, so Dieter Rams or Dieter Rams.
Yeah.
So yeah, so what was interesting about him is that Dieter, if you look at his work, it's actually what inspired the Apple computers.
Mhm.
So the designers at Apple actually, well, I don't want to say stole, but if you compare the work of Dieter Rams from the 60s versus design in Apple, they're actually both the same. So they don't really make that connection, which is they don't like explicitly show that. But when you actually do like a comparison of the designs from one era and the other, you actually see a similarity to it. And matter of fact, here, let me just show it to you on my screen here. The reason being is that Dieter says like good design is, simple, basic, sustainable. And so you could connect that to like the design world generally, right? So if you look here on the right, the left is his design, the right is Apple's designs throughout the last 40 years. The left is a television or a speaker, the right is a Mac computer. The left is the calculator design, his calculator design. So he's considered to be one of the more like influential product designers of the 20th century, and now looks like into the 21st century. But how interesting that a multi-trillion-dollar company literally took a style from the 60s and brought it into our world today, which basically reinforces this idea that there's nothing original under the sun, right? It's design always like goes through these cycles. It's like fashion almost, right? If you take a graphic design history class, you will see, oh, this design came from this era in human history. Oh, that's from the 70s. Oh, that was from the late 1800s, early 1900s. Whoa. So it's we actually take from history and it kind of relives itself in a way. So things go through cycles. And so Rams was just saying like, look, these are my principles. This is what I believe in. And when the time comes for someone to cycle it again, I know I made a contribution. And it goes back to what Talia was saying, where it's like, there's a responsibility that you have as a designer. And just to add one layer on top of that idea is that when you create something, chances are someone's going to rediscover your work and use it for the future. Does that make sense? We mimic that which we connect with. So then you almost have this living forever thing where it's like your work kind of lives beyond you, because now this thing is like has a life of its own. And so now design becomes this thing that goes beyond you, and it connects with people beyond your life, if that makes sense. So it's intense, right? Like when you actually look at it from all these different points of view. So that's kind of what he was going towards, but then I just kind of flipped the script on you and threw one little piece there too. So sorry about that. So But it's it lives on. Art lives on. Design lives on, and what you create has value, right? So
Mhm.
just by having this conversation, young designers realize, wow, it's not just like this thing that just gets thrown away. It's like, no, with the internet, it's the when you do good work, chances are it will get rediscovered and used in some way, shape, because now it's on the internet now, and now it's even more searchable.
Mhm.
So your work lives on forever in a sense, because the internet now owns it. So it's an interesting concept when you think about it like that point of view. But thank you for sharing. And I just wanted to just touch base a little bit and just share that a little bit on how designers evaluate and look at the world. Okay, does
Mhm.
that work for everybody? Is that cool? Cool. Okay, so I wanted to share that. I just wanted to give you guys some perspective, because now this week and for the remainder of the class, now that we looked at mindset and we looked at value, and now you guys know what to charge and how to charge for work and what needs to get done. Now we're going to get down into the design and technical side of things. Okay, so today we're actually going to look at the principles of design. Okay, so that's what we're going to look at there. Before I forget, actually, let me also give you a quick link as well. So if you like these films and you found them beneficial, before I forget, let me go ahead and give everybody a link. I have a link of additional films from this director, Gary Husett. And so Gary Husett is probably, it's interesting. He created this, let's see if I can get the share link here. He made these films because he was genuinely interested in them. And they became kind of like these iconic movies in the designer world for graphic designers and just about all designers in general. And so there's a few other films out there that I have that I personally own that I'll share with you guys for free. Anyone on the internet can view this. There we go. And I'll throw in the link here too. So it's a Drive folder, and it has some documentaries built into it. But basically, and I'll share my screen here so you can see it. But if you really like the film, I do have the objectified additional footage. So bonus footage is also available here. There's also a short 1-hour documentary called Workplace Design, the design of the workplace. And even bonus footage from another film called Helvetica, which is the design of the font Helvetica. So if you found these films interesting, they're probably the most popular documentaries on the topic of design ever made. And so take a look at it. They're actually very comprehensive. They're personal, and they actually look and talk to designers in ways that I think are super beneficial for now and the future. So it's a very cool exploration on the world, and it gives you a behind the scenes look at everything that designers do, how they operate, how they evaluate and see the world. It's helped me a lot in terms of my development, how I should act as a professional, as well as how I should see work too. So I wanted to share that with you guys so that you had that as a value, and hopefully you'll enjoy it as much as I did. Okay. All right. So moving on, a couple of things that I'll say too about the assignment. There were some issues going on about getting the files. So before moving on, how many of you guys are still having issues getting the file itself, which is the documentary questions? I wasn't sure. I reopened it, and the link, it should be able to be copied again. But did anyone or still having issues on the link file? You can give a thumbs up, or you can type it in the chat. But if you're still having issues containing the file, I basically moved the due date to today. So definitely take a look at the film and make sure that you answer the questions. But I know that I set it up. Okay, so Julene, you're having some issues there. So then I'll send it to you right after this lecture, the questions, and then I'll just make a copy and send it directly over to you. If you could directly message me or email me your email, whether it's like personal or school or Rio, or all of them, I'll send it to all of them. So, and then you can click onto the one that is that you can open. Okay. So I want to make sure that you can get it, but I'll make a copy for you and I'll send it out to you and so that you can set it up. Okay, so then we'll try your school email. If that doesn't work, if you have a personal email, we'll set you up there. I basically had it open so that if you have a Gmail, you can access it anytime, anywhere, okay? And so we'll get that going for you. Okay, great. And if you're still having issues, then I'll make sure to create a form, and then we'll just make a custom form, and then that way you can just go into the form and answer the questions to the form itself, okay? So we'll work through that and see how we can kind of make that work for you. So I think I'll try that out. I think potentially the form might help at the end of the day. So we'll make it work for you, okay? Because we're still kind of figuring out that first week and all the ins and outs and things of that sort with students. And then I'll talk to our art department to see like how do we support students from other schools, and do we give them a temporary real email or not? So I wanted to make sure I'll get that information clarified as well. Okay, so we'll be set. Okay, all right, guys. So then moving on, let's talk about the principles of design, because I want to make sure that I want to use at least a good hour and 15 minutes to maximize our time here in the class. We'll take a break. Also because I have to check out of this hotel room today. So I want to make sure that I can get as much time talking about principles of design and getting that all set for you. Okay. Now, if you've already done this class and you've done this unit, this is pretty much the same content, the same information. So if you are open to it, for those folks that have taken the class, basically what's going to happen is that you're going to do the same principles of design, but you're going to use new images or new exercises. Okay. So for my students that have taken the class before, right? Same exercise, everything's the same. What you can do is basically look for new images, new designs that you would like to deconstruct and build up from there. Okay. And that's going to be sort of the difference. So if you had one set of images from last semester or 2 semesters ago, then find a new set of images, right? You can even specialize it to your field, your interest, right? And then we're going to zoom in on that even more overall, okay? So if you want to stick around for the lecture, feel free. If you feel comfortable enough where you're like, you know what, professor, I got this. I totally know how to do this exercise. Then you can log off early, because that's specifically what we're going to work on today. And you can start working on that exercise, okay? So if you're like totally comfortable and you feel that you can do this, then go ahead and create those images or find those images, build your Google slide or your PowerPoint presentation, move forward from there, and then you can turn it in at the end of the week. And then tomorrow we'll basically be looking at the vector versus raster and then the basic tools in Photoshop. So we're slowly moving up, but tomorrow will be some of that new content, new material in the program in and of itself, okay? So feel free, if that's you and you're like totally comfortable and you want to log off and work on the assignment already, go ahead. You're okay to do so. I'll give you guys the green light to do that. You're more than welcome to go that direction, okay? If you want to get a refresher, stick around, and then we'll kind of begin and we'll do the refresher. We'll do the exercise again, and then we'll basically create the presentation with those 10 images that we did last semester as well. So it'll be a good refresher either way, okay? Okay, just wanted to give you guys an opportunity to do that, so that way you can move forward from there, okay? All right, and if that makes sense, give me a little thumbs up emoji, and then we'll talk a little bit about principles of design and how everything kind of makes it work there. Okay, great. All right, so how do I see graphic design? How do I see design? Most of the time, this stuff is hard to teach because it goes deep into analysis and deconstructing. But when I pretty much do this exercise, I feel like artists and designers do a really good job of understanding the world a little bit. And they kind of walk away kind of, okay, I have a better understanding of what happens graphically when it comes to design, okay? So I'll kind of move my images here. If you see like a little gray screen, that's basically the window of Zoom operating through here, okay? We'll start off with the objective, okay? The goal today is to basically understand the principles of design, okay? Like what are the art elements? What's the design elements? How does this all sort of play out? And we're gonna try to understand that and put that into play, okay? And I wanna try to get that at least get us exercising some designs at about, about 11 o'clock-ish, around that time, okay? So that's kind of the goal. So, what are the principles of design? How do I see design, and how do I make sense of graphics and to be a better designer overall? I like to start with this, the Gestalt psychology as sort of that starting point there. So let me go ahead and show you a short video on what is Gestalt psychology, and then we'll go forward from there. So let's take a look at this, and then we'll move forward.
When looking at this, what's the first thing you see? Do you see a bicycle? Or do you see handlebars, pedals, spokes, tires, brakes, a seat, and a frame? If you're human, I'm guessing you saw a bike. This idea that we make sense of things by seeing a whole rather than the individual parts is called Gestalt psychology, and its principles are especially important for designers in creating complete and compelling visuals. Because of psychologists Max Wertheimer, Kurt Koffka, and Wolfgang Kohler, Gestalt theory can be broken down into 6 design principles. Figure ground. The thought that when we look at a scene, we separate objects so that some are the focus or figure and others are the background. Similarity. The notion that we place objects with similar characteristics in a group. These characteristics can include color, size, font, shape, texture, and more. Proximity. The belief that we group together objects that are close to each other. Closure. The idea that our minds close objects that are not necessarily together or complete in order to create a whole. Continuity. The theory that we continue to follow objects that are visually aligned until they are interrupted. Order. The belief that alignment and symmetry are attractive and essential elements of design. When Gestalt principles are ignored, designs tend to look out of place or incomplete, forcing our eyes to focus on little inconsistencies rather than the greater whole. You may not know exactly what seems off, but you will feel something is out of place. The best designs, unintentionally, make the world feel a little less chaotic.
Okay, so Gestalt is this really interesting thing where basically, and let me go ahead and flip that a little bit, where basically when you're designing, our brains automatically make order out of the world, right? And this is where it gets really interesting, right? Like if you just look at how the brain just basically processes images, I mean, we have like everything happens through the eyes, right? 90% of all the information happens visually through the eyes. And now we have all these senses, but most of it is coming in through these cameras that we call our eyeballs, right? And that's a big portion of it. Half your brain is processing graphics, right? 50%. And not only that, it's like 60,000 times faster than text. So, and what I just finished reading a book basically on why relationships don't do really well with people, right? And there was an interesting part of the book that talked about like just the visual side and the right side of the brain. And I was like, what does visuals have to do with anything emotional, right? And basically, without going too deep into the book, what neurologists found was that when you see something, or let's say you see a person, your brain is interpreting visually 6 times faster what the emotion or the face of that person is before you even can think, which is really crazy, right? Because when you think about that, because I thought I think faster than I see. It's actually the opposite. You see and react faster than you can actually think, 6 times faster. So when you see somebody, and let's say, and you see somebody's face, like everyone can relate, right? Like when you see someone and they're not happy to see you, like, like if somebody's unhappy before you even think the word or the idea, like, why are they unhappy, right? I mean, maybe give me a little thumbs up emoji if you felt like, have you ever thought about that? Like you've already judged and already know and already were like, oh, that person's having a bad time. Like you already feel something before you actually think about why they're feeling that way. Okay, I don't know about you, but that's something that I actually like pick up on. Like we feel faster than we actually can like logically think about. If you just look at the brain generally about that, that's basically because you're processing faster visually on your right side of the brain than your left. And but we're not taught to like bring the visual stuff under control, so to speak, right? So yeah, so we actually can interpret emotions and people's facial expressions 6 times faster than we can actually think, but yet we're not taught like to use that in a powerful way graphically. Well, unless graphic designers obviously kind of look deep into themselves and understand that. So I actually feel like graphic artists actually have a better sense of their feelings and emotions in some ways, because we kind of tap into that side and we kind of evaluate ourselves and say, well, emotionally, we know what people are feeling, right? I don't want to go into conditional probabilities and things of that sort, but I do want to just give you guys a brief overview on what is the principles of Gestalt, right? So these principles basically say that whether you're aware of it or not, your brain is going to interpret graphic information automatically in these ways, okay? And these are not even the principles of design. These are just brain psychology principles, okay? But I think it helps to know how your brain interprets graphics, okay? This is how your brain makes sense of the world on autopilot on its own, but most designers don't know it, right? So the first thing is Gestalt, right? Gestalt design principles, and the first one is similarity. And so what happens is that whatever you see, in order to make sense of all that information that's around us, all this visual dump of stuff that's going on in the world around us, one of the first things your brain does is that it wants to find similarities. Like in order to make sense of all the chaos, it just says, okay, what looks the same here? So I can just put that chunk into that category. I just look for similarities. What's the similarity? What's the similarity? And that's pretty straightforward, right? We look for things that are similar, and that's one of the first things our brain does, right? It just looks for the similarities. After that, your brain starts to look at things and say, okay, these are similar, cool. Now, are they following a pattern, right? Are they continuing on from something? And is there a path that it's traveling? So when you find things that are similar, now your brain's saying like, well, is there an order to them? And are they continuing, and is it going in time, that order? So is there a continuation happening here? And do I see that happening graphically? Okay. Then the brain says, okay, well, closure. Well, if there's gaps in the patterns or gaps here, is there a way for me also to close that gap and make even more sense of the world, right? So if there's things that look kind of like broken, I think this happens when you look at clouds, right? If we look at clouds and you try to imagine what they look like, you start to kind of create these closures, and you say, oh, well, if you take these clouds and put them together, or if you just look at that cloud and you look at that formation and kind of close them, it kind of looks like, a kid, or it looks like a face, or it looks like a bird. And you start to kind of create closure. So your brain starts to fill in the missing parts and create a whole. So remember this, right? Like the way the brain wants to make a whole out of something from all the pieces is automatic. And really good designers know how to like pull that into their world. Like they know that this is how the brain sees, and they want to bring people into their world. So one way of doing that is to create or give people an opportunity to close certain designs or graphics, okay? Then there's proximity. So when things are close to one another, we basically say that they're related. So this happens in so many different ways, right? Like if two things look like they're the same color, size, shape, I'm gonna say that they're related to one another, or they're perceived in a group. And so that's kind of the idea. If you break this down into people, if you see two people, walking close or spending time, or they're close to one another, you assume that they're, that they know one another very well, or they're, in a relationship or have something going on, like whatever the case may be, just by the proximity of space, how close they are to one another. And this carries on even into graphic design, right? When things are close to one another visually, they start to we start to think they're related, okay? Then there's, I have 3 more, okay? So then there's figure ground. You don't have to remember this, just kind of be aware that this is sort of how the brain sort of interprets information and groups things. but figure ground is one too, right? Is there something in front of me? Is there something behind? Is there a relationship, right? You know, as human beings, you know, there are things that are further away and things that are up close, right? And we always know that they're connected somehow. So they always have some type of connection, basically. So it's also referred as positive and negative space. You'll hear me say that a lot, the negative space, the positive space, the negative space. But it's also known as figure-ground relationship, which is basically like what's filled in, what's not filled in, and is there something going on between those two worlds, right? So that's the kind of the idea there. Logos do this very well. Then we have symmetry and order. Okay, symmetry means the same, as we'll see in just a few moments. And then is there an order to it, right? So the brain will perceive like these sort of surreal shapes in the simplest way possible. So we want to make sense of the world. And so the idea is that I'm just going to take things that look like something else or ambiguous, and I'm just going to try to make sense out of that world. And really good designers know how to kind of design things for the abstract, or put a little bit of like abstraction into their designs so that it looks like, so that it sucks them in, brings the viewer in and makes them see it. This happens for photography, this can happen for fashion, but anything that looks kind of off or out of the ordinary or dreamlike will always come in and will always be interpreted as interesting, and the brain will always want to zoom in on it and make sense out of that. Makes people want to look at it longer, basically. And then the last one is just synchrony. That's it wasn't part of the original Gestalt therapy, but basically what it means is like if a group of things are moving in a certain direction, or certain objects are pointing or in a certain direction, then typically people are going to move in that direction, or their eyes going to move in that direction. So the easiest example is that if there's a list, if there's a bunch of arrows pointing a certain direction and in a poster, then your eye's going to look in that direction of where the arrow's going, right? And so these are the things that our brains look at. And this is stuff that like user experience designers, mobile designers, folks that design for websites, they know this because they refer to these rules of the brain as ways to like design. So if you know how the brain works, you can design effectively so that you get people's attention, so that you can say something, communicate something, market something, share an idea, whatever the case may be, okay? So that's just the basic fundamentals, all right? So that's how your brain sees, and we're gonna talk a little bit about what the assignment is, okay? Now, I'll start with the assignment, okay? Now, the assignment that we're gonna do is that we're basically going to create a Google presentation or a PowerPoint presentation, whichever you feel comfortable with, and you're gonna write it on the principles of design. And let me just go ahead and just show you what like a sample presentation would look like, okay? So we'll actually show you what the end looks like. And I'll just use principles of design, and we'll use a former student of mine that says that up. So what are we gonna do? So basically what's gonna happen is that you guys are gonna pick your own pictures, photos, paintings, graphic design, basically anything that has a two-dimensional image to it, okay? Not so much products, because physical things are three-dimensional and we can't see an actual three-dimensional thing on a flat screen. So we really want to like just have it be like, you know, drawings, photographs, images, canvases, anime, scenes from graphics, things like that, anything you want. But basically what you're gonna do is that you're gonna make a presentation, you're gonna put a cover on it, you're gonna call it the principles of design, and you're basically gonna find 10 images, okay? For every image that you find, you're gonna write, and I'm gonna show you how to write it, is you're gonna write a description on what are the principles working in that graphic, right? There's like, what do you see? How do you see it? And what's being created towards it, okay? And so you can pick, I actually encourage everyone to pick their images that are interesting, artists that they find interesting. You really want this to be stuff that you think is cool, okay? So you pick images that you find interesting, anime, photos, magazine covers, posters, you name it. It's pretty much open to whatever it is that you want to create, want to pull from, and then we're going to write about it. Okay. And here's why it's so cool to do this is because when you do this process, you actually what you're doing is breaking down the design and seeing how it was created, so that guess what? Now you can create your own design that may be similar, right? So if you know how to build something because you took it apart, that's how you learn. Okay. If this makes sense, give me a little thumbs up emoji. That's how good graphic designers actually do this stuff, guys. They are constantly looking, and in some ways, the good ones do it like subconsciously, like I do it instantly, right? But in the beginning, it's a little weird because it's kind of like, man, I just look to look. But good designers look and they say, man, how did they do that? And this process will actually give you the 6 ways, the 6 things to look for in the design that built it, that can help you build it. Okay. And those things I'll show you graphically, but we'll see what they are. In fact, let's just talk about that, right? We'll see it right now. So this is the format. Okay. Just want to show it to you. You'll create your own presentation. If you have Google, right? Or you have PowerPoints, you're going to create that. You're not making a copy of anything. You're going to create this presentation. Okay. And you're basically going to put a cover, 10 slides after that. So a total of 11 slides, and you're going to put in your image, type it in. Okay. So that's the format. Okay. And so anything and everything is open. You can do any graphic of your choice. As long as you're writing about it, that's what I care about. Okay. So any genre, any field, any time, any era, no matter what it is, I read it. Okay. So that's the format. Now, let's just go back to what are those 6 things that then I should look for, Professor? Like, what are you telling me I have to look for in a graphic design typically? Well, here they are. I'll show it to you in a moment. It's not flipping my screen, so let me go ahead and come down for a minute. There you go. You should see that now. So let's go back up the list. Okay. So here are the 6 things you have to look for when it comes to a graphic design. Okay, we'll start off with the principles and then we'll kind of work our way up there. Okay, now let's actually start off with the first thing. We'll use this as a quick exercise here. So we'll start off there. Okay, so how do your eyes look at this graphic? I think that's the first thing. It's not rocket science. In fact, it's actually more like a 5-year-old looking at a graphic image. So when you look at an image, any graphic image, you're going to pretend that you're like a 5-year-old, right? That that you have a 5-year-old or you're 5 years old, and you're going to look in and you're just going to look at this image. And if a 5-year-old walked in and looked at this image for the first time, what's the first thing that you guys see? Okay, go ahead and type it in the chat, or you can voice it in. But if a 5-year-old were to walk into your room and looked at your computer screen and saw this image in front of you, right? What's the first thing they would say? Oh, look, I see a, what do you think that might be? Type it in the chat or you can voice it in. But what's the first thing they see, right? What would that be? Okay. Okay. So we're saying trees, and we're seeing that for the first time. Okay. I would say you're right? That's literally the first thing. So guess what? Graphic designers design for older people and younger people. They actually make it so simple for kids. And I know that sounds a little bit weird, right? Because you're like, wait a minute, but that's how our brains are. Remember what I said, the brain looks for the simplest way to interpret the image. Okay, does that make sense? So the brain doesn't start with complexity, your brain starts with the simplest thing it can figure out first. So we go with the obvious, the most simplest thing that we notice, that is called the subject. Okay, so the tree is the subject. Oh, I see trees. That's the subject. This artist that is in museums is in the museum for various reasons, but they made it so clear for you to look at the trees. So the subject is the trees. Okay, does that make sense? So the subject, the focal point, is the trees. Okay, so we're gonna look at this. Okay, we're gonna look at this particular image, and I'm gonna ask you a question. Okay, what kind of lines okay, on the upper left, make up the trees? Okay, what kind of lines make up these trees? Let me bring this down a little bit. Okay, are they straight lines? Are they curvy lines? Are they circular lines? Go ahead and type it in the chat or voice it in. But what kind of lines are the trees made out of? Okay, all right. Yeah, curvy lines, okay? Organic lines, okay? So we're breaking this out for you. Okay, so then that would mean that those lines add up to make a shape of a tree. So there's two types of shapes. There's geometric shapes, squares, triangles, circles, and then there's organic shapes, right? Shapes that are made in nature. So the obvious answer is, what kind of shapes do these lines make up? Are they geometric shapes or are they organic shapes? Okay, type it in the chat. Okay, not rocket science. Okay, graphic design is more about the obvious than it is the complicated. Okay, yeah, it's organic, right? So these are organic shapes. Okay, so now we're gonna jump to value. Value is just a fancy word for shading, light and dark. Okay, light and dark. So what kind of shades do we see? Do you see light shades of color or do you see dark shades of colors? I'll reformat it. What kind of value do you see? Do you see light colors or dark colors? Not even the color yet, just light or dark, right? Do you see light colors? Do you see dark colors? Maybe you see both. Okay, graphic design is not so much one or the other. It's actually like, it's a spectrum. It's like a lot of this or a lot of that, or in the middle, or mostly this or less that. It's more like a spectrum, or like percentages, like 13%, 14, 15, 16. It's more of a spectrum than it is one and the other. It's not so black and white on there. Yeah, light, a little bit of both, right? So, and I'm just saying light and dark, right? Like, you know, you see light trees or dark trees? I see dark trees, okay? Do you see light mountains or dark mountains? Well, I see lighter color mountains. So guess what? You see both light and dark values. And that's an okay answer. That is a good answer, okay? So let's go deeper, okay? We'll start off with the space, okay? Is there a sense of space, right? Are things close? Are things far away? Are there things around, right? Would you say yes? Would you say no to that? Well, I think that's an obvious, right? There's a sense of space. Yeah, there's things, the trees look like they're up close and there's little trees further away. So there is a sense of space happening here. So that's an element happening, okay? What about size? Okay, do you see big trees or do you see small trees? I think that's kind of obvious. Or do you see both? Okay, type it in the chat, okay? And what else do you see that is big and small, right? What else do you see that is very big and very small? Not just trees, but do you see anything else that's big and small? What else do you see? Type it in the chat. What else do you see that's big and small? You know, here, let's take a look at it without the thing there. Is there anything else that you see that is big and small in this graphic? And what would that be? Okay, I'm training your eyes to kind of see things. Okay, excuse me, let me move this out of the way. So what else do you see that's big and small? For sure, mountains, yeah, absolutely, right? So those things are also big and small as well. Okay, almost done. Now let's talk about the colors. What kind of colors do you see? Everyone's got a different interpretation of colors, and I totally get it. You might have different types of monitors. So what kind of colors does your computer screen have, right? So what colors do you see? What colors do you see in this image? Okay, go ahead and type that in the chat. What are the colors that you see? Okay, and so we'll indicate what they might be. Okay, maybe the brightnesses are off, but that's okay. All right. Yellowish brown for sure. Any other colors? Green grays, yeah, for sure. Definitely. Okay, you could probably say there's a lot more tones. You could get even more specific. Okay, I would say the more specific, the better, because that means you're more sensitive. And the more sensitive you are to the elements, the better designer you can become. So if you can get more specific on your colors and your sizes and your shapes and your spaces and, and even the line values, you get better because you get more specific as a designer. Okay, yellow, green, yeah, absolutely. So we have these elements and we have these colors, and you basically what we did together was that we actually broke down the elements of design for this graphic. Okay, so we broke it down, we deconstructed. What does that mean? That means that if you ever wanted to create your own mountainscape, guess what? You now know, right? Just by going through this process of questions, looking at these elements, right? Is that, oh, if I ever want to draw a tree, I'll probably use squiggly lines or curved lines to make organic shapes. It'll probably be yellowish, green, or brown. It'll probably be big and small. It'll probably be light and dark, and it'll probably have different like textures and things of that sort, okay? Does that make sense? Okay, give me a thumbs up emoji. Now you know how to create it just by looking at it, but now you know what questions to ask, okay? So now you got that first part down as a graphic designer. I literally do this, right? If I see something that I like, I'm like, man, okay, see organic forms, organic shapes, it's almost like I just know specifically what the colors, what do I like about it? And I like the colors like this, I like that, I like the texture. And so what you're doing is just kind of telling yourself, if I ever do something like this, I know what I like and I know how I'm going to do it because I just know like how it's made. And just by looking at it, you can understand how to make that graphic. Does that make sense? So now everybody here knows how to make a graphic of a landscape using organic forms, organic lines, and certain colors. Everybody knows. Everybody just knows, right? So you go through that process. Let's go deeper, okay? Let's take a look at this graphic, okay? What is the subject, okay? And what I mean is, when you look at this image, what's the first thing you see? And then remember, be like that 5-year-old, right? You walk in, or a 5-year-old walks in, or you're 5 years old, and you look at this and you say, oh, wow, I see a what? What? Type it in the chat. What do you see? Okay, what's the first thing you see within this image? Okay, what could that be? Okay, all right, yeah. And where is that located, that fox image? Is it on the top, on the bottom? I mean, that's kind of obvious, right? But where would it be located? You can type it in the chat there. Like the first thing I see if I was 5 years old is I see a fox, and that fox looks like it's in the top middle area there. Okay, all right, that's your subject. Okay, that is your subject. Okay, and if that is your subject, then that means that we can deconstruct it and make sense out of it. So what are the elements at work here? Okay, go around in a circle, like go clockwise. Okay, start with line and go to shape, value, shape, and coordinate. And so let's start with lines. What kind of lines makes up the fox's head? Okay, is it straight lines, curvy lines, or are they circular lines? What are the lines? Okay, and if you want to go ahead of me, then go down the list. You know, type in the shapes, type in the light and the darks. What kind of space? What kind of sizes? And what kind of colors? So we'll start there. Okay, geometric shapes, straight. Good, Julie. Yeah, absolutely. And so we see that. Okay, we see straight lines that lead to geometric shapes. Okay, what kind of values? Do we see bright colors or mostly dark colors? Or do we see both? What kind of brightnesses of colors do you see? Or value? Is it a lot of a certain color? Is it darker? Is it lighter? But what are the colors that you see happening in this image? What would that be? Okay, go ahead and type that in the chat. Is it lights, like lighter colors, like lighter reds, lighter oranges, things of that sort? Or are they darker colors, darker reds, darker blacks, darker greens? What are the lights and the darks here? What are those colors? Okay, vibrant reds and greens. Okay, again, everyone sees the world a little differently. So what colors do you guys see? Okay, and then we're gonna break that down. Okay, now again, if I'm trying to keep you guys engaged here because we're breaking that process down. Okay, and so designers have to think on a deeper level. Okay, so we're gonna be stretching our critical thinking here. We're gonna go deep. So we're looking at that. Okay, How about the space? Is there a sense of space? Is there something in front? Is there something behind? Or maybe there's no space at all. This looks kind of random and flat. But what is the spacing here? Do we actually see a sense of space, or do we see spacing that's more two-dimensional, more flat oriented perhaps? What would be the sense there? Okay. Now again, there's no right or wrong, so don't feel like there's a right or wrong. What makes good art is that everyone sees it in a different way. So do you see it? And maybe you see it in some areas and maybe you don't. Okay. So if there's no sense of space, maybe you're right. Okay. Or maybe the tail on the right corner there has a sense of space, and we have a red over another. Maybe those are two tails creating a sense of space. I don't know. That's why it's designed. It could be interpreted differently by different people. So we're just kind of seeing what the majority see there. Okay. All right. And what about textures? Do we actually notice any textures here? Does it actually feel like something that we could see or touch or anything of that sort? You can type that in the chat, but do you see something? Do you feel something? Do you sense something? Maybe you do see texture, maybe you do not see texture. I know it's a little bit small on the screen, obviously, because we're on the computer, but based on what you see on your screen, do we see something big? Here, let's go here. Do you see something that looks kind of textured, almost like you can touch it, right? But maybe you do, maybe you don't. You can type that in the chat. Well, maybe I don't see texture, maybe you do see texture, okay? But what would that be necessarily? That's the idea, okay? And we'll see how that goes. Okay. Now we're gonna go a little bit deeper, okay? You guys did line, shape, color, value, space, pretty easy, right? You can use this paper. I'll give you the link in a moment, totally fine. Now what we're gonna do is that we're actually gonna take those same images and we're gonna ask a deeper question. We're gonna ask ourselves, what are the principles of design happening in this image? Because what I just showed you, what we just did was an exercise on art elements. That is actually half of what you're gonna write. Half of what you're gonna write in your assignment is this stuff that's on your screen. What are the lines? What are the shapes? What are the colors? What are the textures? Okay, that's actually half of it. But the other half is actually what those elements add up to. Do the shapes add up to a pattern? Do they actually have contrast? We're gonna go deep in and look at that in just a moment, and then we'll do an exercise together, and we'll leave you some time to look at images. Okay, so we're almost done here. Okay, so you're gonna get this list. These are the principles of design. Okay, there's really 6 that you got to worry about. I always say this. There's always 6 that all good design has. Okay, if you always make your graphic designs focus on these 6, then you'll always have successful designs no matter what. Okay. Graphic designs, okay? But let's go through all the lists first, and then I'll show you the 6, okay? All right, so the first thing on that list is a pattern, okay? That's pretty straightforward, that's pretty understanding. You know, if you're in fashion, pattern is a big deal, right? And so, you know, it's all about things that repeat. Now there's 2 types, you know, it's either the left on your screen, which is like a lot, which is literally like a lot of things that are repeating there. Let me move my little screen here onto the side. So pattern is just repeating, right? But it could be like 100% on the left of your screen here, or it could be like 50% or 60% on the right. So some things could have patterns, a lot of it, and some things could have a little bit of pattern. But that's what's so cool about design, or graphic design, is that there's like a range between the two, right? And so that's sort of the idea behind that. Even in photography as well, there's things in the world that repeat. So if you take a picture of flowers, or like a rose bush or flower bed, that's repetition, right? That's nature repeating itself. And that's really where we get a lot of our inspiration from, right? Is like in nature and things that repeat in nature. So pattern is pretty straightforward. I love pattern. It's some really great graphic designers say that it's almost magical when you think about things that repeat, right? Okay, the next thing, which you always hear me say every time in all my classes, is that you always want to make sure your design has contrast, something different from something else, right? So that's the idea. I don't want to go ahead of myself what the other principle is, but contrast. And there's three types, right? There's contrast of colors, which is, black and white, red and blue, two different colors or more, but there's contrasting colors. There's contrasting sizes, something bigger, something smaller, big tree in the front, small trees in the back, and contrasting size, contrasting shapes. Contrasting shapes is the last one. So contrasting shapes are like, well, we see these organic butterfly images here, and then we see, geometric shapes almost in the background or none at all. So we see different shapes basically. So contrast is really these things. Even in photography, if you have something that has contrasting shapes, sizes, and colors, or all of them happening at the same time, your photographs are that much better, right? Because you're applying these things, right? So contrast, contrast, contrast. That is the name of the game. All good design has contrast, okay? Now after that, if you create contrast, then ultimately you're creating focal point. A focal point, a place where you focus your eye on. Also, the fancy word is emphasis. So you're creating emphasis or a focal point. Now, all good graphic design is going to have this too. You can't actually have this emphasis without contrasting. So we use contrast to create focal point or emphasis. Does that make sense? So knowing how to take control of this, contrast will lead to that, which makes you a better designer. Okay, so those two things are at the heart of all good design, okay? Now let's look at the image on the left here. So what's the focal point? Again, you're 5 years old or a 5-year-old walks in. What's the first thing they're gonna see on this image by Jim Dine here, okay? Under the word emphasis. Type it in the chat. What's the first thing? It's not rocket science. We all know what it is. If a little child were to walk in, what's the first thing they see here? On the left-hand side. They're gonna look in and say, oh, wow, I see a heart. Of course, right? That's the first thing, okay? Now, it's a red heart. Now, what does the heart consist of? Is it an organic shape or is it a geometric shape, this heart? Type it in the chat. Is it a curved line or straight line that makes up an organic shape or a geometric shape? What is it? Okay, you can type that in the chat. So a heart is ultimately what? Is it organic or is it geometric? Okay, the heart, I was saying. So what is that heart necessarily? So you could say right there, well, that's a good question, right? Is it geometric because it's created in nature? You could argue that, right? But let's compare it to the background pattern, okay? Compared to that background pattern, okay, which is consisting of squares, then what's more geometric? Is it the square or is it the heart at that point when you're comparing the background pattern, right? In other words, which one actually has no curved lines? Is it the pattern in the background or is it the heart? Obviously, you could say that the pattern in the background is obviously more geometric than the heart, right? So let's also look at the colors, right? What are there's contrasting colors. So what's the contrasting color happening in the heart? Well, it's red and it's contrasting the blue background of the square pattern. Okay, so that's emphasis. Okay, so we see that happening. Let's look at the image here on the right. Okay, so what's the focal point in this image, right? Now, again, if a 5-year-old were to walk in and look at this image on the right by Gustav Klimt, what's the first thing you're gonna notice, okay? In this particular image on there. Yeah, you're gonna notice a woman, okay? So I see a woman, but specifically what about the woman do you notice first, I would say? So if a 5-year-old were to walk in and they're gonna say, oh, okay, I see a lady, okay? What do people normally see first when it comes to meeting a person for the first time? Okay, what do we see? Yeah, we see the woman and then we see her hair, right? Okay, now after I see her hair, do I just stop looking at her hair? What else do I see about this woman that's so different? In fact, let's talk about the hair for a second. What's the contrast? Why is there a focal point? Why is the focal point the hair? compared to everything else, what is it about the hair that's so different about the rest of this image, the rest of that canvas or that painting? What is it about her hair that is so different from everything else in that particular painting? Yeah, absolutely, Myra. It's a darker color. Yeah, Francesca, there's a contrast between black and white. It's darker, it's black, everything is white. It's different, it's contrast. This designer, this artist wants you to look at her hair. He or she, or Gustave is he, wants you to look at her, not only her hair, but what else is dark on her head. He wants to see her eyebrows. He wants you to see her eyes, right? So you could almost say that, you know, the designer wanted you to look at her hair first and then kind of bring you down to the second thing. Again, our eyes will always want to make sense of everything using the Gestalt principles. Our brains want to make sense. They simplify. We look for similar. Oh, I see black hair. That's the first thing. Okay, what's the next thing I see that's similar? Okay, I see her eyes. I see her eyebrows. Okay, what's the next thing that's dark after that that's similar? Oh, I see her lips. Okay, then after that, what is it about her mouth? She's smiling. Okay, so really good designers know how to kind of get your attention and lead your eye through these Gestalt principles. Does this make sense? Is this making sense, right? If we know how the brain interprets the images, then we know how to order our design based on how the brain sees. Does that make sense, guys? And this is the most practical way I can explain it, right? It's like, oh, okay, well, we look for similar things. We all look for the similarities and the differences, right? So that's what it is, right? And a really good designer will always throw that little question in the background, which is the why. Well, why is she smiling? I can't answer that. I don't know myself, but I do know that I can make some assumptions, okay? So if she's black hair, black eyes, she's smiling, okay, great. Why do you think she's smiling, okay? Well, if you look at the rest of the image, what color is her dress? You know, it's the thing that contrasts her black hair, right? So it's white, right? I don't know. Is she getting married, right? Is this Gustave's, wife? Is it a woman he's about to marry? Is it a lover, and he's imagining this person as his wife, because this is something that most very amorous, people want. They want to be married, and they want, imagine this sort of commitment. I don't know. But do you see how now it goes to a deeper level based on just starting off and getting your attention on the surface level? Does that make sense? You give me a little thumbs up emoji for that, guys. So good designers know how to get you to see, and then the really good ones get you to think. And that's what makes them good, is that they get you to think about it, and they throw a little bit of the abstract, a little bit of this, I don't know, it could be this, it could be that. That level of surrealism or abstraction is what keeps you interested. But it takes time to learn this, and you got to see things in order to understand that, okay? Okay, almost done. Balance. Another principle is balance, and balance is basically how things are arranged on the page, right? There are two types of balances. There's symmetrical balance, and then there's asymmetrical balance, okay? It's not complicated, but here's the difference, okay? Symmetrical, if you look at this painting by Leonardo da Vinci, right? Symmetrical basically means that it's the same, right? It's a mirror image, okay? So if and a lot of designers like to start here basically when it comes to that, but let's just kind of break this down. If I draw a square, okay, of this painting, that's the area that we're analyzing. You could technically say that if I drew a line down the middle of this image, okay, it's not perfect. Let me move it a little bit over to the right here. So if I drew a line down the middle of this image and folded this in half from the middle red line, what's on the left is the same as what's on the right. Would you agree with me with that? If you give me a little bit of a thumbs up emoji. It's almost a mirror image, right? Predominantly a mirror image, right? So what's on the left is equal to what's on the right, okay? That left and versus right folding in half looks the same idea is called symmetrical. it's the same, right? It's called symmetrically balanced. Let me move my little marker here so it doesn't block it. It's called symmetrical balance. So it's the same, that's it, okay? And so then, you know, without going deep into Da Vinci's art, interesting, why does Da Vinci want to create this symmetry? Well, look what's in the middle of the line, okay? Who's in the center? Well, if you're Catholic or Christian or have an understanding of the religions, then that's a figure of Christ, okay? So what's Da Vinci trying to say? In this image that he's referencing on Christian theology, he's basically saying that Christ is in the center, and he's the center of this table or this conversation, or there's a meaning behind that. Does that make sense? So how you place something actually has a meaning behind it, where you put it. It's crazy, right? Because normally you would think, I'll just put it anywhere. No, actually placement has power, okay? That's a tweetable little reference there, right? You can tweet that. Placement has power. Wherever you place your focal point, your emphasis, that has a meaning behind that. So when it's a figure like a Christ-like figure and you put him in the center, you're saying that Christ is the center. And he's the center of this conversation. He's the center of their relationship. He's the center of this space. He's the center of this foreground, figure, background. There's a lot of meaning behind that, right? So he's the center. Okay, that's symmetrical. Cool. Da Vinci, awesome artist. Simple but super effective. Okay. Asymmetrical balance is the opposite. Okay, what's on the left doesn't equal what's on the right. And I encourage my students to actually begin designing things asymmetrically. You actually get good work if you design things asymmetrically. So if I take this image, okay, and I drew a red line around the canvas, right? So we're looking at whatever is in red, in the red square. And I say, okay, if I drew a line down the middle of this particular image, right? And I'm gonna do that. So let me just move that over here. And I drew a line down the middle. So this is about, right about the middle here, okay? And then what's on the left does not equal what's on the right, okay? What's on the left of that line is certain shapes, okay? What kind of shapes do you see on the left-hand side of that graphic, okay? There's only two types, right? Geometric and organic. So type it in the chat. What are the shapes that you see happening here on the left-hand side of the red line? What are the shapes? Okay, take a moment to type that in and I'll draw it out. In fact, I'll do that right now. And I'll use a filler to kind of set it up. We'll use blue for this one. Okay, but what kind of shapes do you see happening here? I don't know. What kind of shape is that? Okay, what kind of shape is this? What kind of shape is this? Okay, those are geometric shapes. Yeah, they're rectangles. Okay, but what's happening on the right-hand side of that graphic? Okay, let's use green on there. But what's happening on the right-hand side? Okay, well, let's see. Well, this doesn't look like a square or rectangle. This is a person. This is organic. These are curvy lines. These curvy lines add up to create an organic form, right? So forgive me, I'm drawing with my finger here, but this is organic, right? And so automatically what's happening here is that the designer is saying, hey, on the right-hand side, there's organic shapes and forms, and on the left-hand side, there's geometric shapes. What's on the left does not equal what's on the right. Therefore, it is asymmetrical, okay? And all good design, almost all famous artwork, guys, no joke. If you literally just look at all the different famous art in the museums, it's this. Most of this work is always asymmetrical, okay? So I always encourage my students where it's like, if you're gonna design anything right out the gate, and we're gonna design some stuff in this class, design it asymmetrically. What's on the left is not equal on the right. And I guarantee that all your work is gonna be 10 times better when you design things asymmetrically, okay? So You will always find success in that. Now, that doesn't mean stay away from symmetry, right? Because if you have a really good reason to be symmetrical, like, oh man, I want to say that this is important. I'm going to put this in the middle, right? Or I want this to be a focal point. There's two ways to do it. You can put something on the left, you can put it on the right, or you can make it symmetrical, but know the reason why you're going one or the other. I actually tell my students, go asymmetrical, and you will always have awesome designs, okay? It's a bold statement, I know, but I want you guys to be successful in this, so I say asymmetrical, okay? All right, almost done. Proportion and scale, something bigger, something smaller, that's pretty straightforward. All good design, when you want to create anything, it kind of lends itself to bigger and smaller all the time, right? So proportion or scale basically means that you always want to make sure that there's something bigger and something smaller in your design. And that's typically what makes things interesting visually. So that kind of lends itself automatically, but that's a principle. Okay, there's always going to be something bigger, something smaller. And if you're creating a focal point, sometimes that's automatic, is proportion and scale. Okay. And then there's the stuff that kind of gets students a little bit confused, which is harmony and versus variety. Okay. And I want to kind of play devil's advocate between the two, right? Now, harmony and variety, let's just break this down. What is harmony? Harmony is when things are similar. Okay. The similar. Variety is when things are different. Okay. You can use similar colors that are harmonious, right? But there could be a variety of colors at the same time. Meaning that you could have bright colors that are harmonious, but you could also have different colors that just so happen to be harmonious. Does that make sense? If it does, give me a little thumbs up, right? So harmony and variety only work if you know your art elements, right? Because then things get really specific, right? Well, the colors are the same, but they're different at the same time. Okay, well, are you saying there's brighter values of colors? Oh yeah, they're all bright, but they're different. Okay, I get it. That a lot of students in the beginning, and this is okay, right? They're gonna be like, I'm having a hard time seeing what's harmony versus variety, professor. And I'm like, that's cool, that's totally fine. That's because you're getting down to the details, and you're starting to see the subtleties. And now you're starting to see even more deeper as a designer. And so really good designers, I think, really kind of know, like, I know what's harmony and I know the variety, and I can play both of them pretty well. Even in fashion, even in photography, that's the thing that you always know, like, hey, well, what's similar? Are you seeing similar in your photography? Do you see similar tones, similar colors happening in your color photograph? Well, it's all brick, it's all this, or it's all concrete. I see a lot of harmonious colors of concrete, grays. They're wearing like a black and white outfit, so I see harmonious like tones of gray. Okay, cool, but you're seeing a variety of different images, right? Maybe that you got concrete as a background wall. The figure is obviously a person, so they're organic. So you're starting to see varieties of shapes, but now you're seeing similar harmonious colors in your photograph, right? That's important. Like, that's actually going to make your photos, your designs similar. The same with fashion as well. You're seeing similar brights and tones, yeah, but you're having a variety of elements and colors and shapes and things like that. But there's still a little bit of harmony happening here that's bringing this wonderful fashion line together. So do you know your harmonies and do you know your varieties, right? That takes practice, and we'll get to explore that, okay? So like I said, harmony. So let's look at this image by Johann Vermeer. Harmony, when they work together, it works. So what's working in this image on the right? What's the same? Let's zone in. Is it the same colors or the same brightnesses of colors? Is it the same dark and light tones, or is it the same colors? What's the same? What's similar happening here? Or maybe it's shapes. Do you see more shapes? And what are those shapes? Do you see more organic shapes or more geometric shapes? Okay, that's the majority in this image. Go ahead and type it in the chat. But what do you see more of in this image? Do you see more organic form? Do you see more geometric shapes? It's more about the majority than it is the minority. What's the majority of art elements here that you see happening? You know, think about your lines, think about your shapes, think about your colors, right? But what do you see more of in this particular image more so? Okay, lightness. Yeah, these colors are, even though they're different, there's similar brightnesses, right? They're not all bright, so to speak, right? They're like the same sort of dull colors. Dark blue, dark yellow, dark gray, dark, almost like a darkish sort of white or gray. Dark yellows, dark tones, dark reds, right? Those values are similar, right? Asymmetrical, yeah. There's more things on the right, and that's harmonious, right? I see more things spaced to the right, Professor. There's a lot more that brings it together. There's space more to the right. There's more things there. Spacing is also a way to create harmony. Oh, they're all there on the right-hand side. So that makes sense, right? Anything else that you're starting to see that is bringing harmony? Well, I see a lot of this. Do you see a lot of certain lines? Do you see a lot of a certain color? Do you see a lot of, what do you see more of that's similar? And that's how you create that harmony, okay? And if you're not seeing or beginning to see it, then you're starting to see ways to do it in your own designs. So you can create imbalances and make that harmonious, right? Now you can create lightness to bring harmony, or use light in a different way to create harmony, okay? Now variety, okay, last one, is variety. Then what are the differences? This is easy, right? Because we're taught to see what's different, right? Well, what are the differences here? Okay, by Marc Chagall. What different colors, different shapes, different sizes, what specifically are the different colors, different shapes, and different sizes that you see happening in this painting by Chagall? Okay, type it in the chat. Okay, what are the differences that you're seeing here? And what does that look like? Okay, so share that for a few moments. What does that potentially look like? Okay, type that in the chat. But what are the different shapes, sizes, and colors that you see happening here? Okay, and then we're gonna set this up in just a few moments there. Okay. Okay, organic curves, geometric shapes. Primary colors like red, yellow, and blue. Okay, making sense here. Yeah, these are the differences, right? So we see different colors, different shapes, different sizes. Okay. Okay. So these. Oh, and then of course the last one. Forgive me. I'm moving very quickly here. So the last one is rhythm. Okay, and that's movement, a sense of rhythm and a sense of movement. And this is a good one. A lot of folks that are in sports tend to like this a lot. But anything that repeats in a certain movement that's continuing, or continuity or continuation, that's rhythm. And basically what that says is that if I take a shape and I repeat it a bunch of times and it kind of follows like a path and it looks like it's going somewhere, that's movement, that's rhythm. So when things repeat over and over again and they kind of have a continuation of sorts, that's how you can create rhythm or movement in your designs. And who could be better than Van Gogh to show us that example, right? So when certain graphics or certain lines or certain brush strokes move in a certain direction and they go up and they go down, there's a sense of movement that happens in that particular direction, okay? So that's the idea behind that, okay? There, so these are the principles, okay? And we're actually gonna do an exercise together. So we're actually gonna put this to work right now for the next like 15 minutes, and we're gonna put together a format for you, okay? So we're gonna do this exercise. We're gonna do the principles of design together. If you can use your chat if you have it, to type it in. Let me go ahead and switch over for a couple of seconds, but what we're gonna do right now is we're basically going to do this exercise. So we're gonna actually do a slide together in our work, and we're gonna make this launch off, okay? Let me go ahead and open up my file, and I'm going to give you, yes, here it is. Principles of design using the Jane Schaefer method. Okay, here we go. So let's go ahead and we are going to get this document, okay? And I'm going to share this link. And then what's gonna happen is that you guys will make a copy of this for your own purposes, okay? So if you wanna know how to do a slide on this assignment for today, this is the exercise that we're gonna do together, okay? Let me go ahead and put it in the chat. And we're gonna say, make a copy. And in fact, I'm gonna take out the word edit and I'm gonna put the word copy there. All right, and if you have, if you're logged into your Google, go ahead and click onto this link and it's gonna make a copy for you, okay? I hope it makes this copy successfully. It should. You should see a window that pops up where it says make a copy, and you have to make sure that you're logged in to some type of Gmail or email in order for that to work, okay? Now, if it's not making a copy, let me know, and it sets you up. Okay, cool. Thank you, Jolene, appreciate it. And it's gonna automatically make a copy for you, okay? We're gonna do a slide together, okay? We're gonna do this format together, and basically every slide you're gonna do today, when you pick your 10 cool images for your presentation, you're gonna follow this format. Okay, so this is very cookie cutter, but I think it's gonna be really helpful for folks that are that wanna get down like the writing component side of it, right? So we will be doing a writing component there, okay? So if you have made a copy, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. That way I can take away some of the windows. So if you made a copy, go ahead and give me a thumbs up emoji for that. And then that way we can set you up, okay? And I highly recommend that if you've never done this before, to please make a copy because it's we want to save as much questions as possible. And of course we're recording so we can come back to the video a little bit later. Okay, anyone else making a copy? Okay, this is probably going to be the longest exercise for the week, but it will be a good one, because it's going to help everyone see and design properly, okay? All right, I'm about to start. Go ahead and follow me here. And we're going to use the chat to kind of follow the format. Now, I already gave you a slide. We're going to type on the bottom. And on the top, I have like an example here, okay? And there's different colors to represent different formats, okay? And let me just go ahead and come back to my little presentation, because I kind of want to show you what the references are to the colors, okay? So let me go ahead and switch screens. Now, I don't know if anyone's ever seen this in their high school. You could totally let me know or give me a thumbs up, but this is called the Jane Schaefer writing method. It's basically a method designed by a teacher, a really awesome teacher by the name of Jane Schaefer. And basically she noticed that when it came to writing essays or paragraphs, that her students were having a hard time kind of understanding how to write it. So she made a map of using pictures and colors and shapes to help students create a writing method. So she's actually credited to making writing easier because she went visual. Sounds like us, right? So it sounds like Jane may have been a graphic designer, or at least had a mind of a graphic designer. She said, I'm gonna tell my students that that a certain topic or sentence will be one color, and that's gonna be like a square to represent that sentence. I'm gonna do another color, and I'm gonna make those, but they're gonna be two similar shapes so that the students can see that they're the same idea, but they're slightly different. So that's why she has squares, right? There's sentences that are similar, but they're the same topic or content, but they're slightly different. And then she creates like a sort of a yellow portion, which is a chunk, or orange, which is a chunk of information. We don't get into chunks because we're not writing an essay, we're just writing a paragraph. But then she finishes off with a green rectangle, which is a little bit longer, and it's different. You notice that the rectangle on top is different than the one on the bottom because they're similar but different. So they're not the same, they're different. So she uses different sizes of rectangles to kind of communicate that. I wish I had this when I was in high school, believe it or not. So that's how we write. So when you see the colors on your document, green means topic, beginning is topic, yellow means concrete, red is commentary, green at the end is concluding sentence, okay? Is that making sense so far, okay? If it does, give me a little thumbs up emoji. That's basically what you see here, okay? All we're seeing here is just, that's what these colors mean, right? The green sentences is topic, sentence, and concluding. The yellow is like the commentary, right? Which is the second sentence. And the red or slash, magenta or pink, excuse me, it's not pink, it's red, but it's the commentary, it's the specifics, and that's in the red. And then the last sentence is that last rectangle, which is green, which is concluding sentence, okay? So that's the structure. That's actually the structure, okay? We're gonna break it down that way, okay? And so I give you an example in it, and so let's go to it. Let's check it out. Let's give it a go. And then once we're done, then I'll give you guys some time to work on find your images, do some practice slides, and looks like we'll be an early day because I still got to check out of this hotel. So there's still a little bit of that going on, okay? So we'll very likely finish early for today, okay? Okay, so let's just kind of talk a little bit about the method, okay? So here's actually the method, and you can follow this like almost word for word, right? The first sentence that we start off with is the green, okay? And we're gonna use the fox as an example, okay? Notice in the first sentence here, it says, in the image of the tree, I'm using the example of a tree from earlier, right? The brown tree with the mountains. I say that there are multiple principles of design. So the first sentence we're gonna write down on the bottom, which is basically an example, is that I say, in this painting of the fox, there are multiple principles of design. I mean, it's literally like that straightforward. Like it's the opening sentence. So you're saying, hey, this thing you're about to read about this image, this painting, there are multiple principles of design. Oh, okay, cool. So that's the first sentence, okay? If you know the name of your artist, great. If you do not know it, don't worry about it. If you're doing like anime and you know the name of the artist, that's cool. You're okay to do that, okay? We're gonna type in that, okay? So that's the first sentence. Now the second sentence, it says, the principles of design that are working within this image, and this is where we get the core, okay? These are the core principles of design, okay, that all designs need. And I'm gonna bring it to focus. Let me show you that slide. Okay, so here are the core principles of design that all designs have, okay? The 6 core principles that are happening here are contrast, where the arrow is. Okay, I want to make sure I get that image in there properly. Yes, so the core ones that we have are contrast, okay, emphasis and focal points. So if you want to write this down on a paper nearby, you can, or you can take a screenshot of this on your computer, okay, and balance, okay. All good designs have balance. Okay, I'm gonna highlight it here on the right. Okay, all good designs have proportion and scale. All good designs have harmony, and all good designs have variety. Okay, so these are the 6 core principles of design that all graphic designs have that are successful. Contrast, focal point, balance, asymmetrical or symmetrical balance, okay? Proportion and scale, harmony, and variety. Now, a few designers or students always say, oh, hey, professor, but you got abstract here and surreal here. What are those? Well, abstract is, if you notice in that image there on the left, which is this little blue square here, abstract basically means that it's there's no reality. It doesn't reflect any form of conventional reality or anything of the sort. It's basically this, it's just random almost, right? Like there's no sense of reality to it. It's just a bunch of expressions of lines, shapes, colors, things of that sort, right? And that's different than surreal, okay, which is below that. And surreal is basically dreamlike. So it does have a sense of reality, but it's unbelievable reality, right? It's like a dream. So that doesn't happen in reality, right? Maybe in our dreams it does, but it's surreal. So surreal is like, it's like bizarre, it's irrational reality, dreamlike, unbelievable. That's surreal, okay? And good designs typically will have some type of abstraction or surrealism happening in the design on top of the 6 red ones, okay? But we don't get into that because that's more advanced level stuff for designers, okay? So if that makes a little bit of sense, just give me a little thumbs up, okay? Cool, I got the 6 red is what we got there, Professor. I totally get that. And good design is a little bit weird or a little bit abstract or has a little bit of a dream quality to it. Why? Because people get into that stuff, right? Right? People kind of like are fascinated by stuff they can't really understand immediately. People are interested in the things that are not based in reality because they're not, right? So that's what makes good designers. It's the level of abstraction that you bring into your design. So if something's, if it looks like a flower, if it looks like a person's face, I don't know, doesn't matter. They're looking at it longer, and they're thinking about it. So now they're actually engaging with your successful graphic design. That's what makes a design successful. There's something weird that makes me want to look at it longer. That's what makes design great. Does that make sense, guys? So that's just a little bonus section there. So you only got to write about the red arrows, the 6 red arrows. Contrast, focal point, balance, proportion, scale, harmony, and variety, okay? All right, so that being said, I'm gonna go back to the document, and because we're almost done, and we're basically gonna write down what we said here in the yellow. So in the yellow, we said the principles of design that are working within this image are contrast, emphasis, balance, scale, harmony, variety, and I just said surreal, so writing about the fox. So I'm gonna go here. If you want to switch it to yellow, you can. And I'm gonna say the principles of design working within this image are contrast, focal point, balance, harmony, variety. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh yeah, scale or proportion. And there is a level of surrealism here. Not every design will have it, but I will include that, okay? And that's sentence number 2. So you're gonna type that in there, okay? All right, so now the red is actually going to be the sentence structure. So we're actually gonna write for every sentence, every principle. So in this one, the first red sentence says, we notice the first of these principles is contrast, which is created by the variation of color, size, and shape. Okay, so here's the formula for writing your sentence. Okay, let me go ahead and try to switch that up a little bit. I want to make sure I get that. So here's the formula for the red sentences. Okay, this design has underlined principle of design, which is contrast, because it is using an art element, and then you have to be specific of what is the art element. Okay, so going back to the elements of art, there's lines, colors, size, shapes, right? That's on the upper right here, or this one. So you got to get real specific with that, okay? So that's the formula, okay? So you're basically going to be looking at your principles of design, your line shape, and I will give you this document, okay? It's on the Canvas system, but I will give you this document in a minute so you can always look back on it. But that's the format for the red sentences. This design has the principle of design because it is using a specific line shape or color. So we'll go down the list and we'll get that. We're going to type that in there, okay? So, all right. I'm going to switch to red. Sentence 3. Okay. This design has the principle of contrast. And if you look at the list, is it contrasting sizes? Is it contrasting shapes? Or is it contrasting colors? Or is it all of the above? What do you guys think it is? You can type it in the chat. What are the contrasting, what does it contrast? The fox's head has contrasting what? Does it have contrasting geometric shapes? Does it have contrasting colors? Does it have contrasting sizes? Or is it all of them, right? What's the obvious one? I would say that this design has, the obvious one is contrasting geometric shapes found throughout the design. Okay, that's sentence number 1, contrast. Okay, now we're going to go to the next principle of design, which is focal point. Okay, let's write the next sentence. Okay, the next principle we see is a focal point. Let me clear this out. Because the head of the fox is, you could say, larger. Okay. Oh, sorry. Let me switch screens. Thank you for letting me know there. Okay. So the next sentence that we have here is the next principle. So I just wrote this down here. So the next principle we see is focal point, or emphasis, if you want to refer to it as emphasis. They're both the same. Because there is, okay, so a fox head located in the top center of the image or of the design. So that's the second principle of design happening there. Okay. Now moving on. Okay, third principle we said was balance. Okay. So just looking at our image here, guys, where is there, what kind of balance is this? Is it symmetrical or is it symmetrical or asymmetrical? Okay, remember, symmetrical means if I fold it in half, what's on the left is the same as what's on the right. If it's different, then it's asymmetrical. So symmetrical, I think of same, symmetrical. Is it the same? Is it symmetrical? What's on the left is equal to the right, or is it asymmetrical? Okay, you can type it in the screen there. So is it symmetrical or is it asymmetrical? Okay. What do we think it might be? Okay. Okay. Okay, we also see that the design is, I mean, you could argue that is asymmetrical. Okay. Right? Because obviously the shapes on the left of the Fox graphic are not the same as on the right, right? In fact, there's actually a very dark sort of space on the lower right there in your image, in your document. So that little difference can actually shift a design towards asymmetry. So we also see that the design is asymmetrical due to the fact that the left of the image is not equal to the right. Or you could say, because there are more darker shapes or darker geometric shapes on the left of the image versus the right. You could say that as well. So the more specific, the better, right? You could also say because there is brighter images on the right versus the left. But so whatever the case may be, you want to indicate why is there a difference, okay? Why is there a difference? Because the left of the image is not equal to the right, okay? Right. Next principle we said in the red arrows was proportion and scale, okay? Okay. All right. Okay. In addition, okay, the scale, and that's what it is on the next one, excuse me, yeah. In addition, the scale of the design is larger for the fox's head versus the other geometric shapes or geometric figures. I like how Google's now kind of like plugging in those shapes, right? Or plugging in the graphics, it's getting smarter. Versus the other geometric shapes. And you can put a period there. Okay. Furthermore, harmony, because we're moving to harmony and variety. Furthermore, the harmony or similar elements I see are the geometric shapes or triangles within the image. But as a contrast, or not as a contrast, but the variety is noticeable when we focus on the colors, or more specifically on the red and I think it's like red and black if I recall. Red, green, or red and green, or red, green, and black. And the red, green, and black colors working within the design. Okay. And then, of course, if we want to mention surrealism, we can mention that as well. So, you know, overall, the design is surreal and engages the viewer to increase visual interest, or make it more interesting, or you could say that, or to make the design more interesting. Period. Okay. So we got the red in. Okay, so you can type that in there. And then at the end, we have our last green, which according to the James Schaefer method is basically the closing sentence is similar to the first green sentence. So I said here, oh, it is evident that many principles of design are working within the image to create a pleasing and strong graphic. So, you know, and if you want to do like an in conclusion, you can. So in conclusion, this image is a successful design because the designer has implemented or showcased all the principles and elements of design, period. Okay. So we have green, yellow, like almost like 6 red because of the 6 principles, and then 1 green at the end. Okay. That format is basically the format we're going to write when it comes to your images. Okay. So that's literally how we're going to go about building it, and that's the format there. Okay. Okay. Any questions about anything that we've seen up to this point? Okay, I want to open it up for some questions before we kind of like share some files and share some things of that sort. So does anyone have any questions about any of the formats that we have here? If you do, go ahead and type it in the chat, or you can voice it in. Okay, but I just want to make sure that this is making complete sense, because what you're going to do is you're going to use the remainder of the day to work on finding images and also creating this format. So go ahead and ask away, and then I'm going to go ahead and retrieve the link, so then that way you have the Principles of Design link available to you. Okay, so let me go ahead and pull that up under activity. We'll get you going. Okay, so far so good. All right. Okay, well, feel free. So here's the resources, guys. Okay, if you go under Canvas, here's the cheat sheet. It's all in Canvas. So link number 1 has the Principles of Design list. So I actually give that to you. Okay. So if you go into today's activity, the first link is the cheat sheet where you can attach elements and principles of design. So that's here, and you can get that. Okay. And of course, you have the writing prompt as an example. So we actually made that now. So the writing prompt is an example, so you can follow that format in your design as you're writing on your work. Okay. So that is now available to you. So you can use that today as a reference. Okay. That's link number 2. And I even have some additional resources like transition words. So how can we begin every sentence with a different format, right? It's always, when we write something, it's always good to start every sentence slightly differently. So some really cool examples of like writing things a little bit differently or starting your sentences is like you could say first, second, third. For example, for instance, in addition, in brief. So for argumentation, you can use argumentation to start every sentence slightly differently, but still keep it flowing, if that makes sense. Okay. So I always like using the left column here to kind of start my sentences a little bit differently, so that it's not the, but rather every sentence is different. So try to incorporate a little bit of transition statements to help you start every sentence a little differently. I like saying first, second, third, in addition, furthermore, and in conclusion. These are great ways to kind of further your writing, to kind of have it flow within the conversation and kind of help people get to a level that they understand. Okay. And of course, to find resources or to find artwork, this is the next link at the very bottom, which is Google Arts and Culture. Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. Okay, you can now find your own artwork in different places. Okay, so before we show you this link, let's actually create a new document for our files. Okay, so just really quick, let me just help everyone get started by creating a new Google document, and then we'll talk about the art collections in a moment to kind of get you started. Okay, so if we go to docs or slides.google.com, I want to make sure that everyone can start on a template. Okay, so docs.google.com. Okay, I'm going to put that in the chat here. Oh, give me 1 second, guys. 1 second. Stand by. Okay, yeah, so they're already knocking on the door. That's okay. Give them a few more extra minutes. Okay, so let's go ahead and just create a document together, guys, really quick. And you're gonna create a general presentation. Okay, here's the link. So what's gonna happen here is that we are going to create a general presentation. Let me move this out of the way. And you can totally, under your slides, if you're logged in, you can go general presentation. You can create a blank one if you want. Feel free. If we create a general presentation, you can click onto general presentation there on the right. And as you create it here, you can basically do under the presentation title, okay? We can call this the Principles of Design. Okay, and you can put your name right underneath that. Okay, first name, last name, okay, as your title. So we can literally call it that. So Principles of Design could be that format. And we don't necessarily need to have all the section titles or even the intro for that matter. You could totally use the first point if you wish and utilize that. Or you could even use the second point if you want, but everything else can be deleted for the presentation. And under first point, that's basically going to be like the name of the design or artwork or photograph. Okay. And you can basically take any column, right? Delete it and insert a picture of your design in this particular graphic. Okay. And you can take a screenshot of that through your collections. Okay. So for this one, if you notice here, I'm going to give you the link here. So these are art galleries. And you can use the art galleries if you wish. If you want to find your own designs and use your favorite artist and photographer and go to different websites, that's okay. But basically what we're going to do is that this list has a list of all these great museums. Okay. And what's cool is that when I click onto the museum, of my choice, let's say I go to Mexico and I take a look at the Olmedo, I can actually explore all the artwork, like Frida Kahlo's artwork is predominant here. And I can look at her artwork and I can click onto it and see not only the artwork, but I can also explore the place, see that particular image, learn a little bit more about it. And I could even take a screenshot of some of the work as well, okay? So if I was wanting to take a closer look at her work, then I can basically go down here to the collections, click onto a design or one of her paintings, and I can literally take a screenshot of this particular image by either using my Command-Shift-4 command to take a picture of it, or if you have a PC, you can do a print screen to capture the image as well, or you can Google it and bring in the image as well. I like to take a screenshot of the design. What's kind of cool about Kahlo's work too, and with Google, is that you could technically like zoom in on the design with your mouse, and you can scroll in and see more details, which is really cool. But it's already there. It's already kind of formatted for me, which is wonderful. And I can literally take a screenshot. And if you're like kind of unfamiliar with taking a picture of your computer, then you would, if you have a Mac, for example, you would take a screenshot by holding down the Command-Shift-4 feature, and that can help you take a screenshot on your computer. Basically, you just hold down Command, Shift, and then 4 at the same time. You'll see like this little plus sign, which is kind of visible here. And then basically, if you hold the click on your mouse and drag over an image, it kind of has a little dark square. Release, and then you'll basically hear like this little ka-ching or this little like snapshot. And on your desktop, you'll see that photograph there, and you can pull it into your design. Okay, so it's really helpful to kind of get the image set up, going. And I think I may have like a PC option, but if there's a specific, if you have a PC, let me know, and then I can give you a quick little video that can also show you how to do the PC option as well. Okay, so we'll take a screenshot that way. But you're going to basically look for 10 images that are interesting to you, and then you're going to add on to that. Okay, so that's going to be the format, and we're going to go in that direction, and then we'll be set and ready to rock and roll. Okay, so that's going to be the format. We'll get you set up there. There's the general presentation here, and if you like to have a copy presentation, I'll actually set this up. I'll go ahead and I'll even set this up as a template for you guys as well. We'll make it a little bit easier. So anyone with the link, I'm going to copy the link. I'll put it in the chat. Make a copy, boom. Yeah, I'll just give you guys an opportunity to make a copy. So if you like this template and you want to use it, you can just click onto the link and make a copy, and I'll save you guys like 5 minutes there on the presentation too. Okay. Okay. Any questions, any issues, any concerns, guys? Is this making sense? I know I hit you with a lot today, but really the first thing you want to do is just look for cool stuff. Look for cool images from all websites, from Google. It's on Canvas. It's available there. Okay. You can go onto different websites and find stuff. You can look at anime. You can look at movie posters. You can look at all these images, and you can retrieve them and put it into your work. But do the stuff that you think is cool. People only write what they like. Okay, that's tweetable, right? People only write what they like. So the best thing you can do for yourself to make this assignment so easy is to just write what you like. Find 10 images that look cool, that look interesting. That's the fun stuff, okay? This assignment will not be due until Friday. Remember, we said we're going to make assignments due at the end of the week. So I'll be popping in to kind of see how's the writing going. Let's do one together as a class. Let's do this exercise. So this will take a little bit of time to get used to, but I will be having you guys share some links, and then we'll do a warm up tomorrow where you're actually going to do the principles of design for the first 10 minutes of class. So you're actually going to do an image I'll give you, and you'll write it out as practice. Okay. Okay. Any questions, issues, or concerns? Is this making complete sense? So Jolene making sense, right? Gio's making sense. Everyone's cool. And if, of course, you've taken my class before, this is the same thing. So find new images for those folks. So find new images to kind of get you going there. Okay. Talia making sense also? You're good? Okay. Just want to make sure everyone understands where they're going. Okay. Write what you like. Just look for images that look interesting. First, take your time looking for some cool stuff. And obviously we're going to conclude a little bit early, so that give you some time to look for graphics and start writing those images. Okay. Okay. All right, guys. Did this help you? Does this help you see things just a little bit better and see design with a little bit of a clear lens? I hope it does. I think once you start looking at using this exact format, you're going to be being a good designer is knowing half the battle of being a good designer is knowing how to see. So the fact that you can have a good mindset, a strong mindset, and now you can see, then everything when it comes to technical stuff is easy. The stuff that's hard is how to get you to think different, see different, change your perspective. That's the stuff that's the most important that colleges need to teach designers, and all schools really at all levels. The technical stuff is not the complicated stuff. The good work is done when you change your mindset and you can see and change your perspective. That's why I do that stuff first. Theory comes first, then the technical stuff comes later. I love the technical, but the theory's got to come first. That's the stuff that you can take with you for life. The technology changes, but the principles of design are forever. They never change, as you're about to see. Okay. All right, guys. All right. Well, then we're going to conclude a little bit early. I know we skipped a break, but that's because we were finishing class early. If you have questions, issues, or concerns, please send me an email, message me, and I will answer those questions. Have fun looking for graphics. I look forward to seeing all the work that you see. All the graphic that you think is cool. I look forward to seeing all the designs. And we're going to do another principles of design exercise first thing tomorrow morning for class. Okay. All right, guys. Have a great afternoon. Stay cool. And I will see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Okay. All right. You are dismissed. We'll see you then.